What's up, y'all? It's the MMA Analyst here to do my post Strikeforce being purchased by UFC video, and basically that's called Fighters Union time. I've done some thinking, and I was thinking the fans have never truly been done wrong by the UFC. The fans, I mean, the UFC took the sport through the brand, brought it to a certain level, have done great things with the sport for the purpose of expanding the money. They've built the sport, but really the UFC, the brand, and that has given a lot of positive things for the fans, right? And I never really was able to separate positive for the fans, positive for the fighters, and what should be happening. So when the UFC comes along and they do all of their positive things and they're expanding and they're going into different markets and they're signing all these different fighters and they're giving us lots of free MMA, you know, free. I mean, it's free to us. To them, they make money off of it, but it's positive. Spike TV, Ion, Facebook, these are all things that benefit the fans. And these are all things that benefit the business. And for the most part, they also benefit the fighters. So all sides are beneficial, but it's by far not properly distributed or distributed. And that's what this video is about. It's about being able to divide what's good for us, what's good for the business, and what's good for the fighters. Going forward, it could still be good for us, and I'll tell you why. The UFC has been on this monopoly road. You know, they passing boardwalk, they putting houses on everywhere. They ain't going to jail. Well, Chael Sonnen, but that ain't the UFC. Anyways, they just collecting the money. A monopoly style, handling it, shutting everybody down. It's actually illegal pretty much everywhere else in any, democratic state with rules and laws. But in the UFC, I guess it's cool. They don't have to follow the rules or something. I don't know, but they've created a monopoly. And even when they bought out Pride, it's not like the fans got hit up with, oh man, now we can't see certain fights. Those fights weren't happening in the first place, and actually now some of those fights have happened. And I mean, just for the record, for everybody, so you know, Fedor and all this stuff is not going to go down. He's not coming to the UFC. I'll be surprised if Fedor fights again now, for sure. But I mean, we're talking about a contract between Strikeforce and Showtime. That's about 2 years. For 2 years to go by, that's a lot of stuff to happen for people to hold on to hopes. Individual contracts will expire. Dan Henderson's contract's up in one fight, so we'll see what happens. Paul Daly, he's shooting himself. Forget the foot, right in the head. He'll never fight in the UFC, whether or not Dana wanted to forgive him, which it didn't look like he did. But he's talking about, I don't even want to fight. I might not even fight Nick Diaz in a couple weeks or whatever. So, whatever. The landscape of what MMA is today and who's relevant and what MMA is in 2 years will likely be completely different by time Strikeforce gets the WEC treatment. They're probably not going to get the Pride treatment, which is just X. The UFC is going to make money, or ZUFFA is going to make money, put on some fights, and then, fold it in. But anyways, back to what I was saying. It's actually been positive for the fans. At one point, I don't know how many events we were getting, how many fights we were seeing. The number of fights and events has increased exponentially. We're seeing so many fights. It wasn't but 2 years ago where we can only see the main event. Maybe 3 years ago max. Within a year and a half ago, we could see the main event and the undercard because of Spike TV. Now it's like you might only have to miss 2 fights that didn't make the Facebook prelim, the Spike or the Ion prelim. We're getting stuff on Versus. We're getting stuff. I mean, we're getting MMA all day long, and that's just from the UFC. So y'all know, and I say the UFC, but y'all know, like, I'm not the biggest Dana White fan, and I'm definitely not a UFC. Yeah, go UFC. Anything you do is right. That's not me. But that's what they have done positive. It's for the brand. It's so that they can make billions of dollars. But that's what the result has been directly for the fans. Positive. Now, for the fighters, this is kind of where it was messing me up. Because I was looking at it like, yeah, it's good for me, but these fighters are getting screwed. And they are being screwed. This is not a conversation up for debate. This is not something to argue. It's not you put your opinion and I'll put my opinion. The UFC is $1 billion company. It is making more now than it's making the same amount as boxing. It's making the same amount of money as a lot of these other major sports. I'm not gonna say they're making the same amount as money as the NFL or the NHL or whatever, or maybe they are. But my point is, they're making big money, and people are like, it's a new sport. Yeah, it's new, but it's not like it's new and it's the 50s. In 1950, the players, the athletes, they got raped, but everybody was getting raped. I mean, black people were still drinking out of a certain fountain. Women were barely working. I mean, the whole world was different. I mean, we're talking a few years removed where, black people weren't even allowed to play basketball. I mean, what kind of world is it when black people can't play basketball with white people? I mean, it's probably a lot less entertaining, but that's what was happening then. Everything was different. The world was different. There was nothing about the 50s and the 60s and the 70s that is remotely close to what it is today. So, yeah, it took 20, 30 years for things to happen right for those guys because NHL, NFL, NBA, whoever was around, they were all getting raped. Somebody at the top was making tons of money and they were just paying these little Gordie Howes, that's a little earlier, all these little dudes, just whatever, just go play. And they're like, oh, wow, I'm making money. I can't believe it. This is great. And then it's like, you do realize that you can make a lot more if we actually do what we're supposed to do and unionize. And then if you really want to talk about it, they were paying boxers $1 million a fight in like 1905. So if that's what we're going to talk about, boxing's been around for 100 years. Yeah. And they've been making millionaires out of their athletes for 100 years too, because the money was there. Just to quickly put it like this, for the net income for the major sports, NHL, hockey, NFL, football, NBA, basketball, Major League Baseball, they pay their athletes between 52 and upper 60%. The lowest is, I think, the NBA and the NFL, which is around 52, 54, 55%. So all the money that goes in, all of it, out of everything that is made in that sport, over half of it goes to its athletes. I know there are a lot more athletes, but at the same time, they're making a lot more money. And again, we're talking about income and percentage. So we're not talking about the numbers themselves. We're talking about the percentage. And the highest is in boxing. The boxers make around 65 to 68% of the income that they make for boxing. In the UFC, I'm not talking about anybody else because it's not worth it, because they don't make enough money to actually make an argument. But in the UFC, the fighters, the athletes, make less than 4% of everything that comes in. Just to put it like this, your average UFC gate for an event that has 15,000, 12,000, they'll have like a $2.5, $3 million gate. $4 million gate sometimes $5 million gate. This UFC 129 in Toronto is going to have a massive gate. I don't know, it could be 15 million, 10 million. It's going to be huge. The fighters' payout, all the fighters combined, rarely is above 1.5 million. Rarely. And if it is above that, it's because somebody got paid $500,000 and somebody else got paid $400,000. And that barely ever happens. So the gate is most often double than what all the fighters are paid combined. Then you have maybe 5 max fighters who get paid from the pay-per-view. But other than that, every pay-per-view dollar goes into the pocket of Lorenzo Fertitta, Frank Fertitta. It's like 80% right there. 10% to Dana, 10% to Abu Dhabi guy. That's it. Every single dollar. The UFC fighters, they sign over likeness agreements. So when you're buying the video games, they don't get money from that. A couple might negotiate something. You know, Brock Lesnar, he comes in the situation, it's a little different for him. But most of these guys, it's just like, yo, you sign it. And then somebody like John Fitch goes, I don't want to sign that. He's like, all right, well, first things first, you're out of the UFC. Frank Fertitta comes around and says, yo, hold on, we can't do that. Bring it back in. We'll figure it out. But I'm gonna ride you forever. Pause. You're gonna have to do some crazy stuff to get title shots. I'm just gonna hate your whole camp. I don't like you. I don't like Josh Koscheck. I like Mike Swig, but he's not relevant anymore, so it doesn't even matter. That's that. And it is what it is. And people have to be on the good side of the boss, which is normal for me and you, because our boss is the boss. But if I'm actually the product, then I shouldn't have to be. You see, you got basketball players, they ain't worried about Stern. Oh, what's Stern gonna do? What's he gonna do? I'm the product. You sell me. I make you money. You make me happy. I make you money. That's how it works. And that's how it works in real sports, or in sports where the product is the actual athlete. Anyways, the point is, these fighters are getting nothing. Nothing. Floyd Mayweather Jr. last year, in his last fight, where he boxed around, moved around, did a nice little showing, he got paid something like $40 million to show up. Sorry, it might have been $25 million to show up, 25 to win, something like that, and like a $50 million endorsement deal. Forget all the extra stuff. He was paid more in that $25 million than, if you do the math, because I did the math, than everybody in the UFC combined for the entire year. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is not the way everybody's being paid, but the point is, the money's out there. And in the UFC, the money's out there. How are these fighters going to get paid more money? Well, in the past, they had options. Dana wants to pay me $100,000, so Strikeforce, they're going to pay me $200,000. I'm going to go over there. Dana wants to pay me $20,000. Strikeforce will pay me $60,000. I'm going to go over there. It's still not the kind of money they should be making, but they have options. And now they don't have options. If you're not in the UFC, you can go straight fight for Bellator if you're light enough. Or you can't go to Japan. Even with the Alistair Overeem, oh, we want to see him kickbox. Where's he going to kickbox? He could maybe, like, it's Showtime. Maybe he could kickbox there. But this K1 stuff, it might be gone, folks. Not just Dream. K1 kickboxing itself, like, it's all the same company. If it falls, there's nothing left. So where are these guys going to fight? So what I've done recently is I've said, look, as the fan, I'm getting what I want. I'm a grown-ass man. If I don't like what they're giving me, I don't have to buy it. There's a lot of things I don't buy because I don't want it, or because they offer it and I don't think it's good enough. And if the UFC was doing that, then I would say, that's it. I'm done. I'll watch something else. But they're actually giving me what I want. I'm getting good fights. I'm getting fights often. I'm getting fights for free lots of times. It is what it is. The fighters are also grown-ass men. And they are getting what they need right now, some of them, the upper guys. But you better believe that anybody on an undercard is working a 9 to 5 or he's flat broke in a business where it's $1 billion business and you're paying people $5,000 on the undercard. Oh, but what about, last time he gave $100,000, man. He gave him $100,000 because he liked the way he fought. Slave tactics, folks. Don't confuse goodwill with slave tactics. If I have the power to increase your yearly income by 200%, if you do what I want you to do, that's not how it's supposed to work. That makes you completely at the mercy of me. What about the locker room bonuses? Same thing. If I told you right now, you go to work, I'm going to pay you half of minimum wage. But look, if you do really good, boy, I'm going to give you $100,000. Wow. You'll say, F that. I'm going to go somewhere else where I can make a normal living that is guaranteed and based on my work. But what if there's nowhere else to work? What if that's the only place? Well, what are you going to do then? Shoot. Pay me half and I'm going to work my ass off. That's really good for the guy who's got, what's $100,000 bonus here and there when you make $100 million a year? Don't try and do the math, folks. It's like giving a penny to somebody when you're making $100. That's nothing. It's literally is nothing. And the fighters, that's the situation they're in. They were kind of in it already, but now they're in it. There is no way around it. If Dana White doesn't like you come a year and a half from now, you're probably not fighting in the big leagues. Bellator is not the big leagues. WEC is gone. Pride is gone. Dream is likely gone. Japanese MMA is gone. And if it's not gone, they're not paying you anyways. So you got to be on Dana's good side. If you're not on Dana's good side, you at least have to be not on his bad side. And if you're not on his bad side and you are on his good side, then you got to do how he wants you, when he tells you, the way he tells you, right then and there, or you could be out. And he's going to give you $40,000 to be on the main card when they're going to make $25 million on the pay-per-view, $3 million on the gate, and you got $40,000 and you're the co-main event. How do you change this? A union.